On Point with Craig's Investment Partners.
The information provided here is general in nature. It's not financial advice. It doesn't take into account your financial situation, objectives, goals, or risk tolerance. All investments are subject to risks and none are guaranteed. So before you make any investment decisions, we recommend you contact an investment advisor. For more information about our services in that regard, you can go to our website, which is craigsip.com. Welcome to On Point. I'm Mark Lister, Investment Director at Craig's Investment Partners, and I'll be talking about a range of topics, including economics, portfolio strategy, investor education, and anything else that's happening out there in financial markets. Hi, team. We're going to talk politics today because we're only 5 months out from the US presidential election, and the campaign is set to heat up next week. Joe Biden and Donald Trump will face off in the first presidential debate of 2024 on the evening of June 27th. The 90-minute event will take place at CNN studios in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a key battleground state. And in New Zealand time, that equates to 1 o'clock p.m. on Friday. So it'll be on the TV, and if you've got no plans for Matariki, then there you go, that's an option. I know what you're thinking. It's way too early in the year for these to have started already, isn't it? Yes, and I'm sure the US Commission on Presidential Debates would agree. That is the organisation that has scheduled all of the election debates since 1988. And it's had dates and locations locked in for September and October this year since late last year. So it really does break with tradition that the candidates have chosen to go 3 months earlier. But then again, there's hardly anything normal about this election, is there? Joe Biden and Donald Trump were both nominated by their respective parties much earlier than usual, and they're already the oldest candidates ever from the major parties. At 81, Joe Biden is the oldest president in history, and if Trump, who turned 78 just last week, wins, he will surpass Biden as the oldest person ever elected to be president. This is also the first rematch we've seen since 1956, and the first rematch between two candidates who've both been president since the 1890s, so more than 100 years ago. Oh yeah, one last thing. One of the candidates is a convicted felon now too. That is definitely a first. So why are the debates starting so early? Well, I think Joe Biden is hoping that an early debate will kickstart and revive his campaign because he is very much on the back foot. Trump is ahead in the polls, and Sportsbet, which is a betting site, is paying $1.62 for a Trump victory compared with $2.88 for a Biden win. So people out there definitely think Trump is the likely winner at this point. Now, that's definitely a little unusual. In 200 plus years of US elections, the incumbent party has won 58% of the time, so more often than not. And when the sitting president is running for office, or rerunning, I should say, that increases that probability to 69%. So Biden should be in pole position to win here, at least according to history, but he's not, and the clock is ticking, and time will start running out soon. His approval rating is a major problem. It's slumped to just 38%, and that's well below the levels that typically point to re-election. In the past 75 years, the only presidents who've seen their approval ratings fall that low at the same point in their tenure are Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr., and that was when they were voted out. Jimmy Carter was voted out in 1980. He lost to Ronald Reagan, and George Bush Sr. Voted out in 1992, lost to Bill Clinton. It's also really surprising to see Biden languishing like that at a time when the US economy has been so strong. The unemployment rate in the US is just 4%, which is well below the long-term average of 5.7%. The data goes back to 1948, and the average over that whole period is 5.7. At the moment, we're just at 4. It's very low. And we've been at 4 or lower for 30 consecutive months now, which is a really strong winning streak. We actually haven't seen a winning streak like that since 1969. However, for many Americans, this is overshadowed by the highest cost of living pressures in decades. The annual inflation rate hit 9.1% in 2022. That's the highest we've seen since 1981. And during Biden's time in office since 2020, inflation has averaged 5.1% per annum, which is quite high, particularly compared to the 1.9% that we saw during Trump's 4 years in office from 2016 to 2020. Now, this isn't necessarily Biden's fault. You had all of those pandemic related issues with supply chains and so forth, but it still happened on his watch, and there's a good chance it could lose him the election. For investors, there's no need to make any dramatic adjustments right now. There's still a lot of water to go under the bridge, and we need to keep an eye on the policy landscape and see who wins. However, it could mean we do need to do some portfolio fine tuning. If Trump wins, he'll want to reduce taxes, in part by extending provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which are scheduled to sunset or expire in 2025. We might also see some changes at the Federal Reserve. Trump is likely to want someone more dovish than current chair Jerome Powell, and Powell's term ends in May 2026, which isn't that far away. That could mean lower interest rates and potentially a weaker US dollar, while at the same time, it could risk another wave of inflation. So we might need to think about parts of the market that could benefit either way and to hedge our bets against some of those potential changes or risks. Trump would take a more hardline stance on immigration, and he'd probably want to ramp up pressure on China too. Having said that, Biden has left many of the Trump era tariffs in place, so there probably hasn't been as much difference between the two candidates as some people might have thought. We could see less regulatory oversight and lower capital requirements that could come with the Trump second term. That would benefit many companies, but primarily the banks and financials could find themselves winners. In contrast, the renewable energy industry could be a loser. Trump has said that he will repeal all of the Biden administration's green energy mandates immediately if he gets elected. We'll need to monitor all of these things in the months ahead and make some decisions about what the impact might be on markets and on different sectors. However, don't forget that the impact of a victory for either candidate will be diluted and much more limiting if their party doesn't also win a majority in Congress. It'll mean they can't do as much as they might otherwise want to do. If you were going to put me on the spot and ask me to predict an outcome today, I'd say Trump will win by a relatively small margin, but we will see gridlock in a divided Congress, and that will limit how much he can do. Now, don't hold me to that. I do reserve the right to change my mind as we get new information and as the year develops, but that's how it's looking at the moment. There's still a long way to go, but for now, I would say sit back, enjoy that first debate and what is sure to be an intriguing election campaign. We will do our best to monitor all of these things and we'll keep you updated and informed as the year progresses. Thanks for listening, team. We'll talk again soon.
For more insights, visit craigsip.com.